What is up, everyone? Welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodríguez. Tonight, we will talk about everything that has happened so far in the world of the Dallas Cowboys on tag deadline, Tuesday. The Dallas Cowboys decided to place the franchise tag on tight end Dalton Schultz. We will talk about the good side of it, the bad side of it, why we like it, why we don't like it. We will talk about the Cowboys' situation at wide receiver as well, because it is increasingly feeling like the Cowboys are maybe about to get stuck in wide receiver purgatory. So we'll discuss that and much more on tonight's episode of ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. What is up? Thank you for joining the show. Make sure that you hit the like button and share the stream. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let me shout out some of you guys who are already on the chat, both on Facebook and YouTube. Burner account. Oh, Mrs. Burner account and Burner account, both in the house. Lumen, what is up? And I bet that Lumen is somewhat excited as a Titans fan after the bomb about Harold Landry's contract just dropped minutes ago. I kind of feel for Buck Rising, the Nashville primetime host, big time Titans reporter, and I'm sure that he had his overlays and his graphics ready to go, maybe even his headline, and now he needs to change that up because the Titans just announced that they had extended Harold Landry. Or, well, it was reported more accurately. What is up, Thomas, Tommy, Army Mom, Heather? Thank you for being here. Charles over at Facebook, Peter. Thank you guys for joining the show. Let's get this started. Let's get the show started officially. Here we go. Let's talk about the franchise tag for Dalton Schultz and much more. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime, brought to you, as always, by our friends over at freemanhyundai.com. We will talk more about them later on the show and about their special Freeman prices. But tonight, what is up, everyone? Welcome, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central on ADC Sports Dallas, Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network, with a lot more content coming your way over at adcsports.com/Dallas. But tonight on the show, we will talk about everything that happened today. It was a crazy Tuesday in the NFL. Russell Wilson no longer a Seahawk. Aaron Rodgers staying with the Packers, as reported by none other than Pat McAfee. Some crazy stuff. But in the world of the Dallas Cowboys, the Cowboys franchise tagged Dalton Schultz, and starting off us with that question right away is your instant reaction. Do you like or dislike Dalton Schultz getting the tag? Did it take you by surprise? Did it not take you by surprise? Did you like it, not like it? Let me know in the chat if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. And while you give me your answers, and I will give you mine, and I will give you 2 reasons to like it as well. We'll get into the negative stuff too. But do you like or dislike? While you give me your answers, let me talk to you about the 2022 Hyundai Santa Fe, the ride of the week, which you can find over at freemanhyundai.com. The new 2022 Hyundai Santa Fe comes at a capacity of 25/28 miles per gallon. It's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, backup camera, a touchscreen monitor, and the Apple CarPlay Android Auto, by the way, is a game changer. And the Hyundai Santa Fe starts at $31,930. You can check the Freeman prices over at freemanhyundai.com for your vehicle needs. Why not check out a family-owned business for over 65 years with great customer service? So check out freemanhyundai.com. Let's see some of your answers. Dislikes as Peter Rizzo. Chuck says, I didn't like it, but it wasn't a surprise. Gregory just says, why? Why is what I say. Army Mom says, bad management. Lumen says dislike, you can get wrong, Gronk. And I'm not sure that you can get Gronk though. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that he will play. And if he does play, does he really want to come to the Dallas Cowboys? I really don't know about that. Uh Burner account just says pathetic, just like that. Dallas Junk, however, likes it. Raul de la Garza also likes it, and he says, I think he's underutilized in the offense. Let's see. I think I think that I don't like it if we're still thinking about the Amari Cooper reports, and you guys know it. I'm pissed about the Amari Cooper's reports. I really don't want Amari Cooper gone from the Cowboys. I think that will be a huge mistake. However, if we're not judging the Cowboys move in relation to the Amari Cooper reports, I don't mind sticking with Dalton Schultz for another year. At least the Cowboys are not heading into 2022 without knowing if they've got a number one wide receiver and a number one tight end. At least now they don't have that need for a tight end. They might still go and target a tight end in the NFL draft, even in day one or day two. Day one would be a surprise, but let's say day two at the least. The Cowboys could be targeting one. It's a one-year deal. We still don't know if they will reach a long-term commitment, even though reports are that they are going to try to do so. But let's look into two reasons why we should like the Cowboys tagging Dalton Schultz. And number one is really just a very basic one. But Dalton Schultz was, at least statistically speaking, one of the most efficient tight ends in the NFL. In fact, he was number 2 in the league among tight ends in EPA per target. The Cowboys were super efficient when targeting Dalton Schultz within the Cowboys, and that would be including the wide receivers. So this includes Amari Cooper, Cedric Wilson, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. Within the Cowboys, even among those big-time playmakers, Dalton Schultz was number 2 in EPA per target. And this is a big one. He was number 1 in success rate. And he actually was, I believe that he was top 10 in the entire NFL in success rate, including wide receivers and tight ends. So, in other words, Schultz maybe is not the most explosive tight end. He's not the most vertical of tight ends. In fact, he was 17th in the NFL in average depth of target. So when the Cowboys target Schultz, on average, it was about at 6.6 yards downfield. But he was reliable, and he moved the chains for the Cowboys, which made him a successful tight end in 2021. Now, of course, the question has become, for many, is that because of Schultz, or is that because of what surrounds Dalton Schultz? And I think it's a fair question to pose out there, but it's still one of the most successful seasons by a tight end in Dallas in a few years. And I know that the bar is not set particularly high, but he was productive at the very least for the Cowboys. Even if he was underutilized, like I think someone pointed out earlier in the chat, I think it was Raul. Top 5-7 tight ends is Dallas Junk last year. That's a fact. And hey, I know that there's also this stat floating around since Don Orlovsky brought it up on ESPN, which was talking about quarterback / wide receiver or tight end, whatever, a pass catcher, right? And I think that that was the duo with the highest QB rating in 2021, Dak Prescott and Dalton Schultz. But I do think that it's fair to point out that Dalton Schultz is not out there dictating defensive coverages. He's not getting double teamed or anything like that. He's not getting the top cornerback of the opposing team on him, which will happen sometimes with some of these big-time tight ends. Like if you talk about Travis Kelce or George Kittle or Kyle Pitts from the Falcons, you're always thinking about who will be covering the tight end because he's a matchup problem. And Dalton Schultz maybe isn't really that. He's much more of this traditional possession tight end, which is not a knock on Dalton Schultz, but that is the reason why we're debating this in the first place. Burner account, thank you for your comment and your donation. Mo, for a team that values the cap so damn much, says Burner account, they are so bad at it. Once again, no plan, drag their feet, and overpay. Wash, rinse, repeat. We're definitely upset about how the Cowboys handle the salary cap because, you see teams in similar situations with their own salary cap spaces that are being aggressive, like the Packers, like the Rams, because I understand that an Aaron Rodgers contract extension will lower his cap hit for 2022, but they're still paying him over the long term, and they're still going to franchise tag Davante Adams. You still have the Rams on a very similar spot financially, and the reports coming out of there are about re-signing their big-time players like OBJ, Von Miller. So I agree with Barner account. We're just frustrated by the way the Cowboys handle their cap management. Oh, look at who's here in the chat. We missed you, Stevie Mac. I hadn't seen you in a while. Stevie Mac says Bobby Wagner is getting released. Get him. And I think this was just out there because I picked at my phone and I saw this. Seahawks informed 8-time All-Pro and Pro Bowl linebacker Bobby Wagner, a franchise icon, says Adam Schefter, that they are releasing him. Hey, it's not an offseason for the Cowboys if you don't talk about a veteran linebacker, right, coming to Dallas. So there you go. But hey, I'm going to, I know that Burner account sometimes is a pessimist in the chat, but I will agree with him on this one. We are not getting him. I don't see the Cowboys making a push for Bobby Wagner, even though I would love to get Bobby Wagner in Dallas. How are we not even going to re-sign Brian Anger? And we'll get into that as well, Joel Wilson. Thank you for being here. By the way, do me a favor and smash the like button if you're here. Share the stream. Each like helps us put this show in front of more Cowboys fans' eyes, and we'll grow the community around here with that. So, Dalton Schultz, highly efficient, even if he's not the one dictating the coverages for the Cowboys offense. He's reliable, moved the chains a lot for the Cowboys. And if there's a second reason why I would say he's a good player to keep around for 2022 is that he was an interesting target when the Cowboys were targeting the end zone, right? Or when the Cowboys were on the red zone, Dalton Schultz was targeted quite a bit. I think that he had 4 touchdowns from the red zone. And Kellen Moore did improve a little bit his red zone offense in 2021. And maybe Dalton Schultz was a part of that success. So I will say that those would be the top 2 reasons why we should like a Dalton Schultz franchise tag. Now, there are concerns about Dalton Schultz's blocking. And I partly understand that because at times his blocking maybe was inconsistent, but it wasn't poor blocking, to be honest. I remember that one of my issues with Schultz maybe was when you saw him pulling, but overall, he's a decent blocker. John Owning over at Twitter put a video together of clips from Dalton Schultz being a good blocker, and he put it out there on Twitter. And I think that we all need to take a look at it because sometimes we are biased, not because we love the Cowboys or something like that, but sometimes the fan base can be biased because of exposure. We don't really evaluate how the tight ends for the other 31 teams in the NFL block. And that's why we believe that Dalton Schultz is not a good blocker. But overall, he gets the job done. So I'm not really concerned about Dalton Schultz blocking, at least from my point of view. It is not that big of a deal. The Cowboys should be okay with that. My main concern would be the fact that he's not a vertical threat. Dalton Schultz is not a super vertical threat, 6.6 yards average depth of target, 17th in the NFL among tight ends. That would be more or less what concerns me, because I was looking and I was comparing the numbers to those tight ends that are among the highest paid in the NFL. Now, excluding those who were just tagged, because I really didn't look at them, I think that those who earn more than Dalton Schultz would be Jonnu Smith from the Patriots, Hunter Henry on a per-year basis at least, Mark Andrews, Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce, and George Kittle. Those would be the tight ends that per year will earn more than Dalton Schultz. Out of those, out of those 6, only one has a lower average depth of target, and that is Jonnu Smith. Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews, Goddard, Kelce, and Kittle all have higher average depths of target. Now, this is also because of how he is utilized, right? This is also because of the routes that he is sent out to run. But his depth, I don't think that he is that vertical threat. That would be maybe my concern. However, Burner account, for example, brings up the fact that you're paying him like a Waller, Kelce, Kittle when he is not even close to that. Let's be fair, though. Let's be a little bit fair here. I don't know how much Waller is making. I don't remember that, to be honest. And I think in that case, he's earning less than Dalton Schultz will earn in 2022. But you're not paying him like a Kelce Kittle. To be fair, Kittle makes $15 million per year, $30 million fully guaranteed, and Travis Kelce makes $14 million per year. So just to be fair, you're not paying him like a Kelce/Kittle. Just to be super fair here. Thank you to Samuel Rowe, who says Mo is good with the analytics. I appreciate it. Thank you. Now, Waller gets $7 million a year. Whew, he's underpaid. He really is underpaid, I believe. Joel Wilson says Dalton is solid. He could be the new Witten. Now, you cannot have this entire discussion without looking a little bit ahead, because the fact that the Cowboys are tagging Dalton Schultz doesn't necessarily mean that they will reach a long-term extension for him. So the question for you guys in the chat is, do you think right now that the Cowboys will reach a long-term deal with Dalton Schultz before the deadline, which will come mid-July? I think it's the 15th of July, though I'm not entirely sure. Do you think they will reach a long-term deal with Dalton? Because logic would say that they are, and maybe the expectation, and I've seen some reporters chime in on this, the expectations might be for them to do so, but I'm not entirely sure, because we've talked here on the show about the way that the Cowboys are kind of bracing for the future in the salary cap. And I've shared this idea on Primetime for a few nights now. I don't think that the Cooper reports, the D-Law reports, are about opening up cap space in 2022 to get Jaron Kears back, among other key free agents. I think it's more about bracing for the next 2 seasons or 3 seasons, when a lot of Cowboys players will be about to hit free agency, like Trevon Diggs, like CeeDee Lamb, kind of, because they will pick up his 5th-year option, I believe. I think that the Cowboys are kind of resetting over the long term at the salary cap. Even though I don't like it, I think that's what they're doing. And if that is what they are doing, I wonder if they are getting ready to get rid of Dalton Schultz's contract, whatever happens after 2022. So maybe you stick with him for 1 season, but you're not making any long-term commitments with your tight end. Let's see. Samuel says nothing's going to change that. When talking about Amari Cooper, Vance Big says that's up to Amari. Yes, says Gregory, and then trade him in 2 years. Dallas Young says, I'm waiting for that Jaron Kears deal to happen. I know a lot of people are expecting it. He definitely deserves it. I'm super intrigued by what the numbers are going to be on Jaron Kears' deal. I'm super intrigued about that because it definitely will be higher than last year for sure. He was one of the starters that played the most, so he is about to get paid. But I wonder how much. Will it be close to $5 million maybe? Army Mom Heather says, can we salvage Amari and restructure? Well, the Cowboys could do so, and they could actually open up about as much cap space as they can by releasing him or trading him. You open up $16 million in cap space if you release him, and you open up $12 million in cap space if you restructure his deal. So the Cowboys can do it. Will they? However, is the question, and I kind of feel like they won't. That's my feeling right about now. Let's see. Gallup about to get $10 million a year, says Joe. We'll talk about that in a few moments here. Stevie Mack says, the one thing I like a lot about the tag is it doesn't pressure Dallas into overreaching on a tight end in the draft. Yeah, I like that as well. Free agency and all of these, procedures that you have before the NFL draft, they're all about getting to the draft with as few needs as possible. And if you didn't tag Dalton Schultz, you were clearly in drastic need for a tight end. We were not about to trust, I believe, Sean McKeon to be the starter for the Cowboys. At least they shouldn't, right? Anyways, let's move on to the next topic. Dalton Schultz is saying, we know that. We'll see how it turns out for the Cowboys in 2022. But for now, we will not worry that much for a tight end. If they're in a position to get one in the draft, that's great. If they don't, just focus on getting the best player available and don't reach for a tight end, like Stevie Mack just pointed out on that I agree with drastically. So moving on, let's talk about another report that came out today. And this was Clarence Hill from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And he reported that the Cowboys believe that they're going to be priced out of the Cedric Wilson market. That's right. The Cowboys are reportedly not going to be in the market for Cedric Wilson because they believe they will be priced out. And not going to lie to you guys, that came as a surprise to me. I was surprised because I said, well, if you're going to move on from Cooper, which is still to be seen, and that's what makes this whole conversation even more complicated to have, because when we're talking about Amari Cooper being gone, we're talking about him reportedly, likely being gone from the team. And I thought after that deal came out, after that report came out on Cooper, I thought, well, the Cowboys are going to stay with Gallup and Wilson. But now it seems like that is not necessarily the case. Even though Wilson is not projected to have a super expensive market or a super expensive price tag, PFF has him projected at, I believe, $6.25 million per year. And Pro Football Focus projects him to sign a 2-year contract. So he's not that expensive. And I think that idea will get the Cowboys to maybe land in this kind of wide receiver purgatory in which you are not opting to stick with your super number one wide receiver, who is the most expensive option because of his talent. You're not going to stick with Amari Cooper, but you're also not going to stick with the relatively cheap player that can fill a role very efficiently. And I would say that in Cedric Wilson's case, that would be the slot, because I think he can play the slot quite well for the Cowboys. And some of his best moments came lined up out of the slot. So there's that. Now, on the other hand, you're not getting the super paid player. You're not going with the inexpensive one, but you're likely to fall right in the middle with Michael Gallup, and they might end up overpaying Michael Gallup. And I know we don't really have a clear idea as to what will the numbers be for a potential contract for number 13. We really don't know. I agree with Joel Wilson and Burner account that are throwing out the 10 million a year figure. I would say over, to be honest. I would say over. But I'm concerned that it might get closer to 15, to be honest with you. I know that's a high number. I know it is. But also, Calvin Watkins did tweet out on Friday, and I quote, "Talks are ongoing with Michael Gallup's agent, but source said nothing is imminent. Gallup's contract demand was higher than what the Cowboys expected. Teams wants to work it out." This is from Calvin Watkins from the Dallas Morning News. He tweeted out, I think it was last Friday. Yes, it was last Friday. So even though Adam Schefter reported that they were close, there is at least one side of this negotiation that says that Gallup wanted more than what the Cowboys expected. So we might be mature enough to be getting ready. We would be smart to get ready to see a high number for Michael Gallup per year. And I'm not sure that you love signing Michael Gallup for such a number when you just got rid of Amari Cooper, because you have the injury concerns, you have the huge question mark in which you don't know if he's going to be able to be a number one wide receiver. It's concerning. I think the Cowboys might end up in that wide receiver purgatory. Let's see some of your comments in the chat. There were some good ones out here. Dallas Young says, "Mo, I remember on Sky's show a week ago or so, he was talking about getting out in front of Steele's contract and extending him this offseason before he gets super expensive." That could be smart. That could be smart because we don't know if Terrence Steele will have a role as a starter in 2022, because he might even, the way that the Cowboys have handled things with Lyle Collins, we're not even 100% sure that we know who will be the Cowboys starting right tackle in 2022. So that could be smart. Definitely a good idea from Sky. I wonder if Terrence Steele kind of wants to bet on himself, knowing that he has already proven to NFL teams that he has the skill set to start in the league, and maybe he wants to bet on himself and wait, because that's also part of this thing. And we always think about it from the team's standpoint, but you also have players and agents that are smart, and that maybe Terrence Steele is going like, maybe he has been approached by the Cowboys, and Terrence Steele maybe can go, you know what? No, I'm not. I'm not interested in any contract talk right now because I'm about to get paid a year from now. You never know, right? I'm just speculating here. Now, I was going to ask you in the chat, do you think that Cedric Wilson is overrated or underrated? Because there are some interesting numbers when it comes to Cedric Wilson. There really are some interesting numbers. Do you think that he is overrated or underrated? Let me know what you think in the chat. Chris says, "I would rather keep Wilson and let Gallup walk. He's injured and we need to work on a true number 2. Gallup is a long ball guy with limited routes." I feel better about Gallup's routes, to be fair. But if we're talking about the value of it, I don't like moving on from Wilson. And if the Cowboys break the bank for Michael Gallup, it might not be great. Underrated as hell, says Army Mom Heather. Dallas Young says underrated AF. What is up, Cash? Thank you. Thank you for being here. Joel Wilson says right in the middle. Gregory goes with underrated, underrated, underrated. So a lot of underrated answers in favor of our man, Cedric Wilson. He was number 1 on the team in EPA per target. That is still a stat that actually surprises me. And I was working on an article this morning about it on ADC Sports Dallas. And I'm trying to open my draft here because I had some stats about Cedric Wilson. And one of those was the fact that he was number 1 on the team in EPA per target. Now, it's worth pointing out, and it would be only fair to do so, that he has few targets. He was at 61 targets while Cooper was above 100. Dalton Schultz, CeeDee Lamb were all about 100. But still, number 1 in EPA per target on the team, the most efficient one out of them all. Among players with a minimum of 60 targets, Wilson was number 4 in the NFL. Imagine that, in the entire NFL. And then we've talked about the boom percentage by Sports Info Solutions for Cedric Wilson, which measures big plays while taking into account what the down is, the distance is, like the context of the play. Wilson was number 3 in the entire league with a minimum of 60 targets. Stevie Mack says Cedi as a quarterback is underrated. Chuck says underrated like our punter. And that Dallas Young, interestingly enough, is pointing out that he was also a special team player. And he had some good plays as a special teamer. Seth is a good player. He's solid, says Stephen White. What is up, Rey Duenas? Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. He says, ¿Qué pasa, Mauricio? I appreciate it, Ray. When Dak was clicking well, it was with Wilson starting. Yeah, the Cowboys worked well with Cedric Wilson. They definitely did. I will say underrated. And I will say that if the Cowboys stuck with Amari Cooper, because, hey, that's possible. That's still possible. Let's say that the Gallup negotiations kind of break down if some of these reports are true, because, again, you have Schefter saying that they're close. You have Calvin Watkins reporting that his agent said that the deal is not imminent. There's a lot of moving pieces. In other words, there are a lot of moving pieces, and it might end up happening that the Gallup negotiations break down, and then the Cowboys end up sticking with Amari Cooper, and they stick with Cedric Wilson. I would be so comfortable if that happens. If the Cowboys have Coop, Lamb, and Wilson as the starting 3 in 2022, plus you can draft another one in day 2, even day 3 of the NFL draft, and you can bet on that player. Like, there are a lot of possibilities here. And to be honest, even if Cooper leaves, Gallup, Lamb, and Cedric Wilson, that would be a better wide receiver unit than many teams in the NFL have, even though it's not clear who the number 1 would be. But anyways, I'm not sure 7 to 10, but I'll be lucky to be over 500 for sure, says Joel Wilson. But I don't know if that was in reply to something more specific. Oh, because Chuck said that the Cowboys were going to go from 12-5 to 7-10. Yeah. Yep. I would rather keep Coop than Gallup, says Tommy. I think Cowboys Nation, for the most part, is on the same boat, right? What the Cowboys are trying to position themselves on a very favorable spot in the salary cap for 2023, 2024, and beyond. To be honest, that's what I think is going on. Anyways, guys, before I leave you tonight, just as a quick piece of info, there are reports out there that Brian Anger will receive, and this was from Michael Gelkin from the Dallas Morning News. He said that the best offer for Michael Gehlken was not going to come from the Dallas Cowboys, and as such, that Bryan Anger could be elsewhere in 2022, which would suck. The Cowboys had a good punter for just the one season. It's been a rough off season, huh? It's been a weird one. And I know Jane Slater, I respect the heck out of Jane Slater. She's the GOAT, by the way. She tweeted out earlier tonight. Let me try to find it. She tweeted out 4 hours ago, Cowboys Twitter is having a meltdown today. I mean, no free agents, sign your own, restructure, and get under the cap has been their thing for years. I agree with Jane wholeheartedly. That has been their thing for years. But I kind of circled back to what we were talking about on Sunday night. This is different, though. This is not them, not signing free agents and signing their own. This is them moving on from two of their best players, if they indeed end up moving on from Cooper and Lawrence, which of course remains to be seen. But the reports are out there, and that's why we're having these conversations. Jeff Harper says, bye, punter, get to Stephen. Thomas says, Jane Slater is my wife. She just doesn't know. Jane Slater is the GOAT. She really is such a successful reporter, and you got to admire the heck out of her. Chuck says, this organization is pathetic. They don't want to pay the punter. Stephen probably wants to save money since Hunter Niswander still under contract. Not as good as Anger, obviously, but he was still pretty solid. Yeah, that's what makes me feel better about this whole thing, that the Cowboys have Hunter waiting for go, right? Jeff says Cooper is going to the Patriots or the Jags. I would love him on the Chiefs, for example. But anyways, guys, I will leave you tonight. Thank you for joining the show. Do me a favor and hit the like button. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, let your friends know about ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Share the stream. Remember, each and every like helps us get this show in front of more Cowboys fans, and we will get to grow the community. Dallas Young, thank you for your support. The same to Gregory and all of you guys. Roy Fletcher, hadn't seen you in a while, Roy. Thank you. Shout out to Roy, because even before ADC Sports moved into YouTube, even before we did that, Roy was one of the first listeners for Primetime. Shout out to him. Shout out to Gotti Stevie Mac, reminding people to check out adcsports.com/Dallas. As always, Primetime brought to you by our friends over at freemanhyundai.com. Check out their Freeman prices. And I will see you tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. See you guys.